Hello, I'm Lynne Franks, your host, and welcome to my latest podcast episode of Frankly Speaking with Lynne Franks and Friends. My special guest in today's episode is my very good friend, author, poet, director, journalist, visionary, and co-founder of Advantage of Age, Rose Rouse. Taking inspiration from Rose's book, Sex, Death, and Other Inspiring Stories, the subjects we discuss reflect on our own experiences, discussing everything from finding love later in life to diving into topics like death that many shy away from, but are essential to understanding our humanity. So here I am with my very good friend, Rose Rouse, on, I don't even know what number of this particular podcast series is. This is Frankly Speaking with Lynne Franks and Friends. And I've taken the theme of this particular series to talk to people who I admire and who I like, some who I know very well, some who I've just started to get to know, about their books. And the last time I saw Rose in London, when we were doing somebody else's podcast, she gave me a copy of this book, actually probably seeing it back to front, so there's probably no point in holding it up, called Sex, Death and Other Inspiring Stories, The Advantages of Age Handbook to Growing Old Funkily, which she, Rose, edited. So we're going to talk about the book, which has been out about a year now. It's not a new book, but it's a fabulous book and should be read by everybody, whatever age. But we're also going to talk about our friendship, how we've known each other for a long while. And in a way, I can't remember, Rose, do you remember how old we were when we first became friends? Was it about 45?
It was in the late 90s, wasn't it? It was in the late 90s because
probably about 45, 50, that kind of just going through transition. You're a little bit younger than me. So we are very much going to be talking about age today and all the things that accompany it and how we approach it. And our particular generation of baby boomers who are very different from any other generation of aging, or I don't know, we're going to talk about what word to describe ourselves, older women and men than there's ever been before. And that we are still out there. We are still wearing bright, gorgeous clothes. And as you can see, those when we watch the video, Rose has always got flowers in her hair. And how we still go to festivals, we still dance, we still have lovers, we still go shopping, we start new businesses. We are grandmothers and grandfathers, and we're doing lots of things that really are nothing to do with age. And I guess we'll carry on until, as I've always seen myself, finally finishing off with, I used to say with my BlackBerry in my hand, but of course BlackBerries have also become age now. And now it'll be with my whatever mobile particular application we have by the time I go. And we are just busy, busy people. And it's fantastic, really. So, Rose, we first met when we were both living in Northwest London, where you partly still live, and you were editing Passion magazine. You were an editor, a journalist, a promoter, a director of movies. You are a mover shaker, one of the most mover shakery people I know. And I love the fact that you are always working on yet another one, if not two or three projects. And I want to talk to you about that a little bit later on in terms of ADHD, which I've realized lately is absolutely what I have, which is why that some of us who are the most creative do constantly go into other projects. But the thing is, you always make your projects happen. They always complete. They're always out there, and then you're on to the next. And I have nothing but admiration for you. So, so we were been about 45, 50 when we first met.
Yeah, still dancing. You were an advocate, and that I met you through the passion, and we discovered that we both had a passion for five rhythms. So then we started going to five rhythms together from time to time and
dancing, five rhythms,
exchanging extraordinary tales of what we were up to.
Yeah, and we were both single at that point, and we both had you have your son, who now you have your grandson, of course, and I have my children. I think all our children were teenagers probably at that point. Yours is a bit younger than mine. And we were starting to go through that kind of midlife period. I guess menopause was somewhere involved in all that, of rediscovering who we were, I guess, all we have been and all we are and all we were then.
And doing lots of alternative stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Was it alternative? I guess that's one way of putting it. I suppose it was. We were seekers, I would say. Would you not?
Yeah, definitely.
And we loved music, and we loved dancing, and we loved fashion, and we loved colour, and we loved art, and we loved poetry, and we loved people, and all those things came together into to us creating what I consider was a really fantastic way of experiencing midlife, because all the sort of hard work at that point, it seemed anyway, had been done. Little did I know.
I have to say that I didn't find my midlife quite so. I mean, it was so rocky in terms of relationships. I mean, we both did quite a lot of personal development work during that. I
Oh,
went on to
yeah.
Tantra, and that was really to learn about where I was making my mistakes around, charismatic men that were unavailable kind of thing.
I
And
remember that time in
finding
your life. I
older
just
age.
went for the wrong men all the time.
Um, but I am finding my older age, a lot more really, really real and creative. And, I've allowed myself now to really dwell on things that I wouldn't have probably dared to or had the confidence to, even if I seemed like I was full of flowers and things. My flowering really feels like it has been happening in the last I'm 71, nearly 72, so my flowering feels like it's really been happening in the last 10 years, really. And I think so. In a minute, you'll say that I co-founded Advantages of Age with a social enterprise with Suzanne
I was
Noble.
going to, yes.
I know, sorry, but I wanted to say that part of our philosophy and ethos is encouraging people to be, to really walk there, not think, oh, I like painting, it's a hobby. No, get an Arts Council grant and do that project. I mean that, and really do it. And Suzanne being a, blues jazz singer, and do it professionally. So
So, I mean, in your case, you develop two new relationships, which I think probably have got a lot to do with who you are now. One with your partner, which we're also going to talk about, starting a new relationship in your 60s, and what that's done, because that's given, I see from your being your friend, a lot of stability. And from your partner, Suzanne, in Advantage for Age, which is also important to have somewhere or somebody that is safe to be with, who is safe to be with, and discuss all these ideas and encourage each other. And I'm sad to say I have not had either of those, and it gets very difficult on your own. But what we do need, whether we're getting older or whatever age we are, but particularly when we get to that slightly older phase, is we definitely need our friendship group. I mean, I believe all women need their friendship group, their pod, and that's what I work on with Seed and with all the other work I do, is actually bringing women together in groups where they feel safe, where they get heard, where they get seen, and where they can really share their stories, which for me, the women I work with, is the most important thing, that we sit around, whether it's at the Seed Hub or even on a Zoom, and share things that have actually never been shared before in a place which feels really secure. That's the route that I've gone. And I'm not feeling sad for myself because I've got wonderful friends in my life, you included. I mean, I've got fantastic, fantastic friends. But having got divorced in my 40s, late 40s, and then having also the very sad experience of losing an enormous amount of my friends died early, whether it was through the AIDS epidemic or whether it was my two best women friends having cancer. It's been a bit solitary at times, and I guess that sort of human need for tribe, which I've certainly always had, and I think you have too. I know you have too, which was so much part of Five Rhythms in a way, is a really important part of our life, which we accept more as we do get older. Is that sort of surrounding ourselves with like-minded people? But anyway, I've drifted off. That's not what I wanted to talk about. But I just think
I
it.
think
But would
it's
you not
interesting.
agree?
I mean, I am quite hermit-like at the same time. I've always worked on my own at home. Look, I'm at home now. I've always been freelance. So it's an interesting balance there. And that's something that with Advantages of Age and having a Facebook group, I love having a tribe on Facebook that I can plug into, that we exchange quite profound discussions about aging and also vulnerabilities too. So although we're called Advantages of Age, we also embrace the vulnerabilities of aging. And I do find it suits me as a kind of, self-confessed hermit to have a Facebook group that for, you know, as well as my really good friends. Of course, I've got really fantastic. I was in women's groups, but I do think it's an interesting thing finding this balance. You know, you're a much more of a people person than me. I I'm not such a people person. I appear to be very sociable when I'm out, which I am, but I actually like a lot of peace and quiet. And
I'm not that. I mean, I spend most evenings curled up on my sofa with chocolate, a cup of tea, and my dog, watching telly. So or reading books. So I'm not. I'm not out there. I mean, I have always done jobs back in the PR days for sure, which were about people and were about parties and putting on events and being very social. But I underneath all that, realised quite later on that I was quite shy walking into a room of strangers if I wasn't there for a purpose. Even now cripples me up, and it's not something that I seek out. I quite like. I mean, New Year's Eve I spent at home with the man in my life, and just had a quiet evening, and we're both in asleep before 12. I mean, that's perfect for
me
me.
too, me too. That's exactly what I did. And then the next day, so Madam Flamboyance went out and we went to a birding. We saw some new birds. We were
Lovely,
thrilled for our new year. You know, we
really
were
nice.
thrilled.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting as well, isn't it? How we change. But I think one of the differences in our lives is that I've lived in lots of different places more than you. You travel all the time. I mean, you just told me you were about to go off to Algeria. You've traveled, I have no idea how many countries, but to some very,
I know. I have lived in Madrid, New Orleans, Paris, you know, lived for years.
have you? How
Yes.
did I miss that?
Maybe something you didn't know about
I
me.
didn't know about you.
Yeah, because it was before I met you.
Oh,
I learned Spanish, you know, I speak Spanish and French quite fluently. And it's
yeah.
because
But
I
you
lived.
do go on a lot of adventures still, and
I
places which
do.
other people might be a bit wary about going. I mean, tell us about some of the things you've done that you.
So, I mean, relatively recently, a couple of years ago, I went to Senegal with my son. So that's one of the things I share. I've got one son, an only son, and he is very much a soul son. Kind of, we share so much that is, you know, projects wise, he's been involved with me in the films. He's a filmmaker, so it's helped me make films, obviously. And I'm so happy that we went to Senegal. Senegal is just somewhere because I studied French that I've always wanted to go to. And my God, my son came with me, and it was a wild land. And I would go back to Senegal. It was
It's
like,
high on my list, I must say. There's not many
oh,
places I haven't been to. Senegal's always been high on my
it
list.
really is amazing in terms of music
Yeah, exactly.
and art, just everywhere, and people welcoming you in. I mean, very funny bits like, you know, people trying to get me to be their sugar mummy when I'm with my son. Very embarrassing for my son, and really hilarious for me. You know, like old reggae artists inviting us in and then deciding that I was the love of their lives. I mean, it's a Sufi brotherhood country and sisterhood too, but still in that patriarchal way. But oh my God, a wild landscape of baobab trees and salt lakes, and you know, and you know, the effects of global warming you could see there too, the erosion of the coastlines, but and poverty. But a wild adventure, and thank God I spoke French because it's actually quite difficult to move around if you don't speak
Yeah.
French.
Yeah,
But
I've had some
I,
Senegalese, very close Senegalese friends who promised to take me and somehow it never got together. But there's still a lot of leftovers from slavery there. They've got that island, haven't they? I've forgotten what it's called, where you
yes,
go in there and you can
I
still
can't
see the
remember either, but I went
Brit.
there.
Yeah, they've shown me the pictures. I had a photographer, Senegalese photographer boyfriend who had amazing photographs from those places. And yeah,
I have
so
got a female companion who travels with me these days because my partner, who we will talk about at some point, no doubt, but I'm in a living apart
well, let's
together
start talking
relationship.
about your partner. Let's introduce your partner. And I remember when you met him, which was what, about 8, 9 years ago, 10 years?
So as I became, no, as I came towards the age of 60, after being single for at least 10 years and having kind of erotic relationship, I wanted to have a partner. And it was really difficult to do. I got all my women friends to help me, you know, help me invoke him. But in the end, I did this week-long intensive called The Path of Love. And it was really just to reveal my vulnerabilities. It was like I was hugely angry that, the universe wasn't giving me a good partner. So I went and did this course where you could declare all of this. And a Sangha judge was actually one of the volunteer angels. So he'd done it before and he was back as a volunteer member of staff. And so he ended up holding me during one of the afternoon's cathartic explosions. Afterwards we were on the floor. I mean, and he was just lovely, but I wasn't attracted to him because I'm always attracted to the facilitators because they're the charismatic one. Anyway, but we kept in touch, which we weren't meant to do because that's not the rules. But anyway, he got in contact with me at some point. And and he lived in North Wales and I'm in London, so it wasn't very practical as we're getting older. But he's a mad adventurer, explorer. He's 10 years older than me. And the thing that really attracted to me initially was that he could write, he could communicate. And since I'm a writer, I realized how important that was to me. And he could express himself. And we have been on this long journey, and oh my God, it has been challenging. And yes, you're right, he has brought stability for me. And he's been, like Suzanne, they're both incredibly allowing of all my different ways, projects, things that I immerse myself in. And he too is, he's like that too. So he's a climber. He's 81. He's just had a hip operation. He's had a major injury in the past from rock climbing, but he's still determined to get back on that wall. So now at this particular moment in time, I'm doing an MA, a 2-year MA in poetry writing, which is, it's, the opposite to my usual thing, which is eclecticism and dipping around here and there. It really is deep focus and quite terrifying because, you have to write essays, citations, read lots of essays, read lots of books. So, I mean, Asaka is being very supportive of it, and he's doing sketching. So we did a book together, actually, poems
Yes, I was going to bring that up. You've done a book and exhibition. So you do the
yeah.
poetry and he does the beautiful
Oh,
paintings that go with them.
yeah. So, we do collaborate, and he's doing sketching at the same time he's doing a sketching course. So I've just been up there. And, we have had rocky times around bringing rocks back into it, around what will happen, as we get older. It's 5 hours to drive up to North Wales, and that's non-stop. So it,
So you go up there, what, for a week or so, and then he comes to you for a week
well,
or
it changes all the time. So
yeah.
it's not a constant thing. And I guess that's part of the attraction too, is
Mm.
that so I just did my essay and everything early so that I could just go and spend 2 solid weeks with him and just be and not do any work at all. I didn't even do Advantages of Age much. So I've just been there being with him.
And I read in the book actually, to come back to the book, his piece, his
Oh,
chapter
yeah.
about his sexuality getting older, and he talks about how he met you and asked you to become his tantric sex goddess, not even sure himself what that meant, and how you two have developed as you've got older into the whole aspect of sexuality and sex. Lovemaking as you get older because it's not the same. It never can be the same because our bodies change and our needs change to a degree. But I think we've talked about this before, I think on another podcast, this whole idea that you get to a certain age and then you don't have sexual needs or sexual activities is of course ridiculous. And
It has
It changes,
definitely.
doesn't it?
I wrote a book called I wrote a book. I wrote also a pamphlet, a poetry pamphlet called Tantric Goddess. And in that I wrote about the Making Love retreat that we went to. I wrote quite a funny poem about that. But that Making Love retreat, Sangha was more in the mode of, because he's achieving kind of man. He wasn't more in that achievement based orgasms or whatever they are when we first met. But gradually we had both, and that Making Love retreat, which was a week, I think, relatively early in our relationship, it did remove that achievement thing. His piece in the book is called Sex in My 70s, The Pressure Is Off.
Mm.
And it really has been a long voyage around that, but we're still in it. You know, he's just had a hip operation. We're still in to the kind of it might be small and sensual, but it's still happening. I mean,
I think from my own perspective, it's about being comfortable and trust, having trust between the two of you, complete trust. I mean, that's my own experience. Um,
yeah, and I think no expectations. So, but what
yeah.
we do is
Oh, I
create.
don't know. I have expectations. Well, usually delivered, but I mean, it's not the same. It's different. It's different. What is
I
it different?
think when I say no expectation, yeah, I do mean no expectations of what happens within that, because what we do is usually create a making love morning. So we have, you know, and we designate it as space. And it might be so we famously have baths together. I think we went on Radio Floor for the listening project and talked about the joy and the sensuality and the whole ritual of having baths together. And we usually let that lead us into whatever it's going to lead. And you know, different things. I always think I get bored by the same thing. So we allow things to just, and yet there are things which he really loves doing, like brushing my hair, for instance, or whatever. And so there are things that enter into this ritual. And we do appreciate, oh my God, something that we learned to do in our quite fiery relationship was when we were in Rajasthan in 2014, and I was deeply irritated with him all the time. Poor Asanga. Sorry, I'm sorry, Asanga. It's my fault. But we decided then, okay, we'd start this practice of appreciations, and we still do it now. I mean, we do the whole thing, you know, tune into ourselves, then look at each other, tune into each other. We can do this in deep conflict. And then we just start appreciating one
Yeah,
another.
I know exactly it's a tantric ritual that I Gabrielle Roth actually, who created Five Rhythms, taught me that many years ago, and I've used it in many a relationship, and I've even used it because it's not a sexual thing; it's actually just really being vulnerable and open and true. And I've
Yeah.
even done it with my son once years ago. I don't know if he even remembers when we were having a bad time communicating, and it was really powerful. But I don't think I've ever done it with the, with the man in my life who I've been with on and off for about 8 years. I hadn't thought about it before, but I don't think he would. I don't think he'd play. And it's really funny because he comes from the world of kind of holistic life, so-called alternative way of being. But I'm going to try it. But I did it for years. I found it. I know. So just so for those who haven't really got it, so you sit opposite each other. This is how I understand it, with a candle. Close your eyes and you sort of really zone into yourself. And when you're ready, you open your eyes and connect with each other and
Yeah.
sit there in silence and actually also the way I learned it was you put a hand on each other's heart chakra and then you cover it with you cover your partner's hand with your hand and you sit there in silence and that's as I say the way I was taught and then when you feel comfortable you start
Yeah.
talking about how you're feeling and sort of exploring your relationship in a
No,
very
well, we don't do
non-accusatory
that.
way.
We don't
You don't
exactly
need
do
the hand
that.
thing.
We literally do. So one of us starts and say, and it literally is, I appreciate this about you.
Mm, mm,
And then the
beautiful.
other one receives it, and then the other one starts. I mean, now, you know, I appreciate you, but I must say now that we've been doing it for so long, we do slightly go off tangentially into, you know, we might be sitting in the bath doing this because, oh, that was the other thing. Asanga he's the first man to buy a bath because of me. So he bought a huge bath.
I was going
So
to say it has to be a big bath.
yes, it's a great bath. It's a great bath. I love it actually. So yeah, we do go off tangentially into whatever vulnerabilities are going on at that moment. You know, I mean, and there have been lots because this year he's had a pacemaker put in. He's had a hip operation, and a hip operation there was a big deal. Often people say about hip operation, oh, you know, yeah, you know, great, I'm fit as a fiddle, but he had it on his injured side, and you know, it's taking a long time to. I mean, it takes a long time anyway. So you
Mm.
know, there are just things to talk about around all of that and what that brings up, and her, you know, he's 81. things around death and dying come up, but vulnerabilities around how we age. Will I recover from this? How far will I be able to walk? Me navigating all of that as well. So yeah, it's great for all of that because it restores our sense of trust in each other and gives us a bedrock between us of yeah, more solidity. Actually, funnily enough, I've written a piece which didn't go in that book, but it's on our Substack because this book, Sex, Death, and Other Inspiring Stories, came out of all the pieces that I commissioned across the years, and I'm still commissioning. But I wrote a piece called "The Joy of Sleeping Separately" because for many years I couldn't. Since the menopause, I'm not a good sleeper. And
Mm.
so even when I'm at his place, I sleep in the other room and he sleeps in his bed and we visit each other and everything. But this is what I love. So this time that I went up for 2 weeks, I started sleeping with him again and found that I could sleep. I love the fact that I just spent two weeks sleeping with him and seeing the sun rise from his bed and just being able to do that snuggly thing in the morning. I mean, and we've been together like 12 years or something now. And I love the fact that the narrative can change if you allow it to. I just feel so well slept. I slept incredibly well. I'm just
Beautiful.
like so shocked.
Yeah, that is really lovely. And let's talk about the death further on about the death. As we say, the book is called Sex, Death, and Other Inspiring Stories. And I find it really hard to talk about death, even though I have been with both family and friends at death or very near to death or minutes away from death. And I am able to be in that situation and be supportive and loving and be very present. But when I start thinking about my own death, then I go into complete denial that I'm ever going to die, and then I'm always going to be around, which is a rather ridiculous. So tell me about sort of I mean, some of the activities. You actually made a film, didn't you? And with Susanna about death, the death dinner.
Initially, when not long after we'd created Advantages of Age, we got an Arts Council grant. And one of the things that we did within that, because we really overserviced our Arts Council grant, was we made a film called Death Dinner. And basically, I researched people in death world, death doulas, death soul midwives, a mortician, a death ritual expert, academic, and invited them to a feast that we had around a table in the Dissenters Chapel in Kensal Green Cemetery. So I have these places in my life that I use artistically and keep going back to. So Kensal Green Cemetery is one of them,
Hmm,
and I happen to have access to the chapel, and
amazing.
we did an amazing performance actually that night. Only the central discussion was filmed, which has made an hour-long film called Death Dinner, which at the time I wanted to take around the country talking because it basically creates discussion afterwards about death and dying and what people's experiences and things. So, I mean, I just took it to, so I'm still taking it to places, but just when people know about it and invite me. So I just went to Feast in Malvern, which is a theatre festival, and they invited me to bring the film, and then I created like a death cafe space afterwards, which is so great. It just is a space where people talk about deaths that they've experienced or anything around it, really. I mean, assisted dying was a topic which was, just going through Parliament, starting its journey through Parliament. So that came up, and it was a very intimate. I love creating that kind of
I'd
intimate.
love to ask you to come and do that an evening like that here at the Sea
Yeah,
Club. I think we should get that
yeah,
organised
I'd
because
love to do that.
perfect space to do that. And I think it is
Yeah,
so important that we talk about death, and it is so important that we celebrate it in a way. I mean, not the last time I saw you, but quite recently we both met up at a friend's funeral, Nikki's funeral, Nikki Brewster's funeral, didn't we, in the woods in Somerset?
but
And
I just taken that other film. The last time I saw her, I was so glad because it was when I came to bring my other film, the dance film, which is about death as well. to you and showed it. And I was, remember you were saying, oh, but I'm doing this dinner, I'm doing this lunch today, Rose. And I said, no, I'm going to go and see Nikki. And that was the last time I saw her, basically.
Mm.
I had no
And
idea. So
well, it
glad.
was very premature, as so many of our friends leaving us, but such a beautiful celebration of her life in the woods with her daughter, who's a talented singer, um,
Singing
doing
an
music.
amazing song guiding you home that she's made into a video of her mom Nikki doing
Mm.
Tai Chi, which is one of the, yeah, I'm still um
There
um
is a new way now of celebrating death, which is very different. As I sometimes just am so exhausted, and I just slug onto my sofa and turn on the TV, and then they have these terrible ads for funerals and cremations, and I'd have to turn the TV off again, and it's all so awful and drab and boring and how to save money and all the rest of it. And actually, however much money we spend, even my mum, bless her, when she passed away, and I was in charge of her funeral, I put her in a wicker. It was in a within a Jewish chapel, and she always insisted that she wanted to be cremated. But I arranged for a lovely wicker coffin, and the family and the children and my grandchildren all put daffodils. It was spring, put daffodils on the coffin, and I did not do that awful thing that they did automatically with my dad, where you sit there and you have that terrible grinding noise, and the gates open and the coffin drops in, and it's so awful. And this was much more a celebration of her life. And I think that certainly I haven't written down yet how I want to go, but I do need, I've always thought a big party with lots of fireworks. I always thought was it Hunter Thompson always had a great way, wasn't it? Hunter Thompson of putting his ashes in a rocket and then sending it up as fireworks. I
yeah,
thought that was always
yeah,
pretty
Johnny
cool.
Depp happened
Johnny
with
Depp had to light the light. Yeah.
yeah.
I thought that was always very good. I
But
think,
David Bowie did that. You know, you were sort of talking about cremation. There is a movement towards this kind of direct cremation, isn't there, these days? Well, I mean, David Bowie insisted on having one, didn't he? Where he didn't even have anything. I don't think he even had a memorial. He just had, it went, all of him just went and was cremated and
yeah.
he went.
Well, there's that, and there's also sort of being buried in a kind of pod where a tree comes out from what's left of you, which I always rather like the idea of as well. I haven't looked into.
I did love how we did my mum's, and we did have. So there weren't many people at my mum's. I was a celebrant, and we asked if we could do it in a cafe in some woods near where she was in a care home, not that far from my sister either. And it was a cafe with one open side, and basically we did a procession through the. I really, I'm really into processions. I really want a procession. So
Procession,
we
yes, procession.
process through these saplings, holding items of my mum. Like my mum was a big knitter, and always, even when she had Alzheimer's, she would feel wool in this very sensual way. So we held items, and then we went, and she was mad about Simply Red, so we had that playing. And Marlon, my son, had made a film of her talking in her very Yorkshire accent. He'd done a whole thing with her earlier on, over the last couple of years, and that was really beautiful. And Ilkley Moore Bartak playing. So we just had a very simple but very intimate little celebration.
Sounds absolutely lovely. I think I'd have to ask you to do
I like
mine, actually. Maybe it's yet another new project for you to do is to do people's really groovy funerals.
really funerals. Yeah, I've
There's a
noticed
business
other
for
friends
it.
of mine doing it, like Angus from Test Department. I don't know if you remember Test Department and Angus from Test Department.
No.
Oh, he's runs an arts company in Glasgow and has become a celebrant. I definitely like doing it.
There's definitely a business there. I always thought there was a bit of a business as well to make a film while you still can, or be filmed the way that Marlon did with your mother. And just
Actually, it's true. Actually, Malon should do that.
he should.
Yeah, it's
You
a
do
good idea
mine
to do
while
that.
we've still got our brains, and then something that our grandchildren can see, and their children. What was it all about? Because in my case, in my family, I'm sure they'll get a very distorted view of who I was from my children, but I'd like something to be there for my grandchildren, or perhaps not a distorted view, their perspective, their subjective perspective of me, which is possibly a little different from my own subjective perspective of myself. But anyway, that's my relationship with my lovely, gorgeous children, who I do love and adore, but definitely a different, different perspective. So how we reach out to our grandchildren. I must say, now that my oldest two grandchildren of the seven, or even the oldest boy as well, of a certain age, my 20, Lola's 21 and Memphis is 18, and my other, the boys are getting starting to be 15 and 13. And actually spending time with them on their own, on your own. I'm spending time with them on my own with them as young adults. And you're not into
But
sort of the grandma thing. Well, you are. You're still the grandma, and lots of lovely kisses and loves, lovely hugs and birthday presents and Christmas presents. But also being able to talk about meaningful things, which is
yeah, which is really great. I mean, yeah, I love all those. I love all of those intergeneration. That's another thing that I feel passionately about is intergenerational relationships, which is what,
completely.
you
Well,
know,
I'm going to be putting on this event, it would appear. 30 years ago, I did What Women Want, which you may remember at South Bank, and it looks like we're doing it again in Bristol. And the idea very much is to have intergenerational conversations. And I'd love you and Susanna to get advantage of age to be part of what we're doing there and
right. Yeah, we'd love to.
we'll talk about it off the podcast, but I'd love your creativity in helping me get that side of things together because we definitely want to look at the modern elders, if you like. Now, in the book, you talk about, what is the word? Are we old? Were we young? You think that we should be old, refer to ourselves as old.
I do.
I
I think we
I
should be the
find,
appropriate old,
yeah, I find the words all very hard
like Mary
because they
did.
come with so much, think about semantics, it all comes with so much baggage and implication by modern society that young means you're full of energy and old means you're ready
Yes,
for the
exactly.
heave ho. But actually, sometimes that can be quite reversed. And it's like, why give ourselves labels at all? And it's a very hard one. What is our label? And
I mean,
I,
what we say is we're doing aging differently at advantages of age, but I also say let's reimagine old. Let's re-envision old, and all those comments we talk about, all of that kind of, you look great for your age. No, you look great. Um, all of that age is just a number. I don't go for that either. I think, no, we are old. We need to admit
I
we're
don't know
old.
that old's the right word because it comes with so, like I say, it comes with so much
But
baggage. It means like old,
queer came with luggage,
finished.
didn't it?
What?
Queer came with lots of words
Yes, that's true.
that
You mean
come with
take
baggage,
ownership of it and
but
use it.
we've
I mean, I quite
reappropriated
like,
them.
I'm quite open to words like crone and I love wisdom keeper. And I use wisdom keeper in my work, but actually being a wisdom keeper is really not about age either. I mean, there's some very wise young people and there's some very
Exactly, exactly.
non-wise older
I know,
people.
and that's one of the things that advantages of age I often say is, and Suzanne does too, is that we are not old and automatically wise because it doesn't. What I want to be is old and curious, old and open, not
Well,
necessarily.
I think we were talking earlier about one of the similarities between us is, especially when we first met, we were searchers. We're still searchers. We're on our journey of yes, it's being curious and wanting to know all about many, many things, being open to it, which is why you travel and you're constantly doing new things. It's why I'm so
And
interested in people.
admitting our mistakes. If we are wise as old people, it kind of it like prevents that thing. I mean, I've had to admit that I made mistakes just at the beginning of when I became a grandmother. I mean, it's a hard when you did one kind of parenting and mine was like more hippie put the Moses basket in the middle of a party and expect my son to sleep. And mine was
Well,
all
I did
about
a lot of that. They weren't in Moses baskets, but they were dragged around to parties and dinners when they were little. Yeah,
flexibility. It was about flexibility, and these
yeah,
days it's more
yeah.
about kind of
Oh, I've
they've
made
got a lot
so
more
many mistakes.
information.
I make mistakes every day. And when I talk about wisdom, I think it's really all about having experience, really. I'm actually quite good at, and I do it partly for a living, is mentoring other people about their lives. But when it comes to my lives, and I look at some of the things I've done, as I say, even quite recently, and I think, what's the pattern here? One of the things I do acknowledge as I've got older is a lot more self-analysis without being too much up my own backside. I mean, I do sort of look back and think, why was that? What did I do there? It doesn't mean to say I make changes. So I definitely, in your book, you've got a chapter about somebody written by a guy actually saying he found out he was ADHD at 57. Well, I found out I was ADHD at 76 because I my daughter-in-law is a psychotherapist, and I said to her, "Do you think I'm ADHD?" And she said, "There's absolutely no doubt about it." And I'd never talked about it or thought about it before. I actually coach somebody now who is ADHD, who goes around training others and big businesses in how to deal with it because so many people are neurodiverse in one way or another.
Well, that guy who wrote that piece, Ivan Pope, who
Yeah.
actually started Siberia, the internet cafe, actually, he was
Oh,
the
did he?
first one.
I thought I
Yes,
knew the name. I worked with
yes,
him. I
yes,
worked
he
with
did.
Siberia. I got them
Ah,
involved in What Women Want. They did a lot of the teaching at What Women Want, two women who had never gone on the internet before.
well, he
Oh,
started a group now. He's doing research on ADHD. He started a kind of group for artists because he was just put into advantages of age, and loads of people, because we are basically a creative group, a group of creatives, have have applied to him to say that they want to be part of it. So
oh, I
yeah,
want to be part of it.
for anything, I'll email you his
Yes, do. I
stuff
think
about
because
it.
I kept thinking I knew the name. That's another thing is as one does get older, certainly if you've been out and about in society in the same way we have as journalists and PRs and just that's our nature, we do get to meet an awful lot of people and trying to recall everybody in my life sometimes get a little challenging who I met say 40 years ago, 30 years ago. I mean, something came up with in my Buddhist organization that I've chanted, as you know, for the last 40 years on and off. And the person who was running the UK side was a lovely man called Richard Corsten, who led the chanting at my 40th birthday party. And somebody put up this week, oh, he's passed away 30 years ago. And I'm thinking, he passed away 30 years ago. I still feel I'm in a room talking to him. And that's another thing that sort of all the people that have had a huge influence on me in What Women Want. The three people that really helped me get it together were Glenys Kinnock, because she did a lot of mentoring to me at that point and getting involved with women on all levels. Nita Roddick, who helped promote it through all the body shops and was supportive right from the beginning, and the wonderful Sinead O'Connor, who helped me get the whole concert aspect together and worked really closely with me on the whole idea of bringing in Irish nuns and Celtic singers and Jermaine Greer and many other things. And Sinead was a friend for quite a while. And anyway, I'm looking at
I
doing
went
some
to see
activist
her with
awards
you,
based
remember?
on all three of them. Sorry?
I went to see Sinead with you
Yeah.
at South Bank.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
can't
Not that
remember
long
when it
ago.
was.
That was the last time I saw her sing, I think, when she was part of
Yeah.
Wow. I spent that weekend with her. Yeah, a big, big loss. So anyway, I'm looking at sort of activist awards based on those three, but it just so many Gabrielle Roth. I mean, a close, 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 close friend. And I feel like at some point, I think I've got more friends waiting for me on the other side, and they're all organising this huge party. When I do finally pass over, which is not intended for a while, they'll all be there waiting for me, I'm hoping, and then just have a really good time. That's the plan. But anyway, I don't spend too much time in that because I'm really in the moment and the present here. So
Exactly.
where do you see yourself going? I'm not going to ask in 10 years or 15 years because that's stupid. Even thinking that far, but you're healthy, you're vital, you're full of energy, you're full of creativity, you're full of ideas. Every time I speak to you, you've got another big project on. I did not know you were doing an MA in poetry, which I can imagine takes up a huge amount of time. And but I know that knowing you as well as I do, that there are probably at least half a dozen other things that you're juggling with or thinking about. So what else are you up to?
Well, the thing is, Suzanne and I are talking about doing this award ceremony again
Are
because
you?
it I say this reluctantly because well, despite you saying all of that, I really feel it's important to put in time for meandering. Anyway, the award ceremony that Advantages of Age did with the book is really the best thing that we ever put on, and we had to do it, me and Suzanne. So we actually crowdfunded for for an agency, a creative agency, to get sponsorship, and they totally messed up. They didn't do it, so we ended up, and it was my year that I was 70, putting on a huge festival with a singer in his weekend. So then in September, and it was in November,
Dog's starting to bark. Sorry, can you let him
me
out?
and Suzanne had to raise the money ourselves, but we put it on at Hoxton Hall, and it was, it represented us entirely. It was because it was so eclectic. It was from death to sex to, we had too many awards, but we'll cut them down. But we had like death advocate, we had most inspiring story. We had contributor to, and it just, the whole evening was just very flamboyant but incredibly warm. So we had people called, what were they called? Companion voices. They sing people over the threshold. There are other people that do this in terms of death singing, and they were shortlisted, and they did a performance of the songs that they sing to sing people over the threshold into death. So we had that going on at the same time as Style King, Jama Elmi, who's that guy who goes around in those amazing orange suits and, around Portobello. I just saw him actually the other week. And a singer who won the Sports Guard for still climbing at 80 and collected his award wearing a huge pink feather boa. And it was full Hoxton Hall. And Suzanne and I presented it ourselves. And it did feel like it was just, Louise Chun won the well-being.
Who did all the voting? You got the members of Advantage of Age.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And then we had a judging panel of about 7 people that we had. So they voted first, and then we had a judging panel that we had round at Suzanne's over her kitchen table. So yeah, it was just a wonderful thing to acknowledge quite a lot of small organisations out there too who are doing great things, from a bigger one called Men's Shed, but there's another one called Social No Frills that do kind of discos for over 60s in Stoke Newington. Those kind of people. There's an inspiring story with Louise Butcher, who she runs Topless. Have you seen that woman called Louise Butcher?
No.
She's had cancer. She's had her breast
Oh,
removed,
yes.
and she does lots of topless running. And she came and she gave an amazing speech. I mean, it was a great night, and I think it represented everything that we kind of passionately believe in.
Yeah, I'm
So
so sorry I didn't make it, but I will be there next time. It sounds amazing. Absolutely. Where will you do it? Will you do it at Hoxton Hall again?
we do it at Hoxton Hall again because it was very us. And oh my God, the people at Hoxton Hall were just so brilliant. I mean, you know what a difference it makes at a place, at a venue, when you've got this very collaborative kind of crew around you. Yeah, and Suzanne is absolutely brilliant at all the stuff that I'm not good at, like all the technical stuff. So it was presented in a really great way. So
Hmm.
yeah, I think we will do that again, because we have to really. I want to do the actual night, but what it takes to actually get to the night, as you know, on those things, is a lot. And also collaborating. I must say, there's a few people around. There's like Meg Lee Chin, who runs Temple of Ideas. She puts on events. She's a 64-year-old music producer, passionate about getting a club together in the West End for over 50s. She's kind of rock and roll, hilarious, really wonderful. And she put on events on Hampstead Heath, which I didn't make it to in summer, but before Christmas, Suzanne and I both, so Suzanne sang and I did poetry and I read from this book, actually, a bit of it about reimagining old. And the audience, our audiences, they have a very warm audience. So we are members. So yeah, her and Pete Lawrence, who does
I know
Camp.
Pete, yeah.
He's wanting
Campfire.
me to get involved in Campfire Convention, and there are loads of crossovers between us too. So I like the idea of more collaboration between people that we're similar to. It's just a great idea for us. And I'm doing. There's a festival called Silver Sky as well, which
Don't
is
know
lots of
that.
the men's work people. Richard Olivier goes to it. Lots of
Oh,
the
yeah.
time project. People go to it. I went to the first one and ran a how to write a poem from the soul workshop, and then Asanga did his bowls. He does these big crystal bowls, and Melissa and I showed the film, the other film. So this year she's invited me to show the Death Dinner film. She's great. She comes to all of ours. So again, this kind of
Crossover. It's lovely.
yeah, really.
Where do they hold that
Well,
festival?
it's moved to East Sussex. It's Women Within, that organisation, Women Within, and a few of the men's organisations, including a band of brothers that I work for. So,
Oh,
you know,
it all
all
comes
of
through,
it
doesn't it? It
kind
comes
of
round and
melding,
round.
melding together, which
Yeah.
really, I
Do you
love
think
that.
that women are more able to talk about becoming old and what that means to them and being open, or do you find it's not a gender thing? It's just the
Well,
way it
I
is.
don't think it is a gender thing. I think the more, I mean, you know, Asanga's getting better. There's a guy called Adam Duncan who was part of a band of brothers, and he's based in Brighton. And he's doing his whole thing called. Actually, you should be in contact with him. He'd be good for this because he runs a thing called Life Stage and has written a book about it. And he's doing exactly that, talking about men and women getting older and how to kind of approach these different stages.
Yeah, I think it's actually, as we're talking, I think it's going to be important to have men involved with what women want as well, because what women want in all the surveys that we did 30 years ago, 20 years ago, and even 10 years ago, what they want is to be with men who understand them and who are compassionate and who are loving and able to be real, and that's what they want. Mum
Exactly.
have it, apart from as well being safe and being part of community and lots of other things, but it's such an important part of that, particularly important part of getting older. Of course it
I mean,
is.
at some point, we really should get together again. It's not going to be whilst I'm doing this MA, but it's some kind of conference about age, you know, having the creative organizations that we know who are interested in this area already
I
working in
think
this.
that's a terrific idea. I really do. I think, to have all these different organizations and groups and so many of us, I think there'd be a huge response. Um, I don't know why it comes up to me that Glastonbury might be a place to do it, but it's just a thought. There are a lot of aging old hippies around Glastonbury, including me. But
Yeah.
anyway, yeah,
Well, anyway, yes, further discussion over that.
it's an ongoing discussion. It's
Meanwhile,
always between
I'm
Rose and
writing lots
me.
of poems about it at the same time, you know.
Yeah. Though, as always, Rose, we're always going on to the next thing and the next thing, and then see each other at the festivals in the summer. Although I didn't manage to do that this year, to do
And
festivals this year.
WOMAD is not on this year.
None of them are in on this
Ballet,
year. Oh
yeah.
no, Glastonbury is still on for another year, isn't it? Yeah, I think the temptation for festivals for me it gets a little bit less as I get older, due mostly to the
Oh,
practicalities of walking miles, not very nice toilets, and food being rubbish.
Lynn, you'll have to pop down to Love Jam though. You know, Love Jam is the festival that my niece runs and is basically younger people, but
Yes.
obviously, but it's near Glastonbury now. It's on the terrain of Crops Not Shops, that organisation called Crops Not Shops. It's a lovely terrain.
Uh-huh.
And you know, they bring so that's where me and the Poets of the Soul. So I've got this little
Oh, well,
group
maybe
called
I'll see you there.
Poets of the Soul. You could come down for the day.
Yeah, and that sounds much nicer. And it's quite interesting what is going on around here with you're talking about crops, not shops, but there's a number of small holdings run and owned by young people. A lot of them are off grid, doing some very, very interesting work with getting
Yes.
back to the land, which is something I'm really very keen on, the whole regenerative agriculture side of things, which I think it's young men and women. And it's very, very lovely to see, I think, in the younger generations that there is much more equality, that the men and women together are doing projects. And, I definitely, and so do you, come from a generation where women had to really fight in a way to be seen and to be heard. And we still, in
And it
many
took a
cases, have to be seen and doing things in a very male-like way. You only have to look at politics and the House of Commons to see that. And so my whole, as you know, my whole work is how do we create equality in a balanced, harmonious society with women in their full power alongside men. And that's, yeah, still a
yeah,
huge
I
challenge.
certainly see that with my son and his partner, with my niece and who's running this festival, Love Jam. I'm really interested in looking at all of those dynamics and talking to them all about it. You know, I love doing that.
And as old people, whatever we can do to share and support them as they move forward into creating the future, because it's going to be them, not us. We can just help hold the space for them
Well,
while
and they want us there. That's the thing is my niece wants to have some Ulsters there. Some, Ulster elders
I
there.
like Oldster. I don't like old, but I like Oldster. I think that works.
Yes, I like Ulster too. Only I discovered that Ian McEwan that's his word as well. So I slightly went with it
Uh, yeah,
then. Anyway, yeah, Ulster.
Oldster. All right. Well, as one Oldster to
Ulster.
another, as always, it's such a pleasure to speak to you. And
Yeah, lovely.
thank you
Thanks for
so much for
inviting me.
putting the time aside. And we will be doing a little plug for the book, because I think, well, whatever age you are, it really is a great book to read, and it's funny and light. And
And our Substack, because really now
yes,
I'm commissioning. I mean, there's a story this week of this woman who's a film TV series. She's basically gone ahead and got together a TV series that is women over 50. Have a look at it afterwards, and she's sharing it
I saw it.
online.
I'm on your mailing
Yeah.
list.
Anyway, she's yeah. So there's lots of radically different voices. Like one of the most popular pieces on Substack that we've got at the moment is an older woman who's single, no children, and that we're always giving voice to those women too, or those people who are
Very
not.
important. Absolutely. I mean, it's a whole other thing, isn't it? I guess what was Victorian times and post, so my grandmother's time, it was like the maiden aunt or whatever.
But
And
now living rich lives with different, just a different, we're in a different era around that. But I'm aware that, that's one of the supports that we can give. But yes, our Substack is advantagesofage.substack.com.
beautiful. Thank you so much. Thank you. I hope you enjoyed listening to my fun but deeply relevant chat with Rose. After all, aging comes to all of us. And actually looking at how we can still have a good time, go to festivals, have lovers, look after ourselves physically and as naturally as we can, are all extremely appropriate for today's baby boomers, which I am definitely one of. And even if you're a lot younger, there's a lot you can learn. I've been thinking about the seed exercise that I would like to suggest you do as a result of listening to this podcast. And I would like you to think about all the things that you enjoyed as a teenager, all the things that you enjoyed as a young adult, and how many of those you're still including in your life, perhaps dancing, singing, playing a musical instrument, and how many you've actually let go. So think of one thing that you've always loved, even as a child, and bring it back into your life and create a time of joy and good memories. If you enjoyed what you heard and would like to learn more practical ways to help you plant your seeds in your empowerment journey, then please subscribe to this podcast, rate it and review. Also, please make sure you visit lynnefranks.com, where you can join my mailing list if you haven't already, and together with thousands of like-minded women, become part of my seed network, meeting up through my coaching courses, seed programs, retreats, and Somerset Hub. So looking forward to seeing you next time on Frankly Speaking with Lynne Franks and Friends.